I pulled into my own driveway and saw a moving pod squatting on the concrete like a steel toad, its mouth wide open, boxes stacked to the lip. A vinyl banner whipped across my porch, "Welcome home, Carter family." In cheerful cursive I didn't order. My hydrangeas were knocked sideways, dirt spilled like little graves along the walkway. A pair of boys I didn't recognize were dragging a headboard up my steps. One of them looked at the address and asked, half laughing, "This is 318 Willow, right?" I rolled down my window and felt my jaw lock. "This is my house," I said, and my voice came out the way grease pops, hot and warning. If you're hearing my story, please subscribe so more voices like mine can be heard. I'm Evelyn Carter, Evie to my neighbors, 50 years old, born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, on the north side where folks still wave from porches even when times get rough. I'm a cafeteria manager at Emerson Middle, the one who slips an extra spoon of mac and cheese onto a kid's tray when I know payday didn't stretch far enough. I bought this 2-bedroom bungalow the same year my granddaughter was born. Peach brick and a sloped roof, roses in the front bed and a pecan tree out back that drops shells all over the patio. I paid down every note with overtime and prayer, working through heat waves, snow days, and those spring storms that knock out power and nerves. This house is my prize, my sanctuary, my old lady dream long before I'm old. The boys set the headboard down when I cut the engine. "Ma'am," one said, "we got orders to deliver for Carter, Daryl, and Kendra." He squinted at his clipboard and then at me. "You Miss Carter?" "I'm the Miss Carter," I said. "And Daryl is my son." "Who signed for a pod in my driveway?" He tapped the paper. "Says authorized by household." He pointed to a signature, Scribble City, E. Carter. That wasn't my hand. That wasn't my E, the one I learned from Miss Collins in 3rd grade, loop neat as a treble clef. I stood there listening to the banner clap against my porch rail and felt the day tilt wrong, like stepping off a curb you thought was there. I climbed the steps and pulled the banner down. The tape took a curl of paint with it. I called my son. He didn't answer. I called again. On the 3rd ring, a text pinged, "Be there in 10 ma. Stop trippin'." The tone burned me more than the sun. 10 minutes later, Daryl's Charger swung around the corner, bass rattling the hydrangeas. He got out slow like he'd rehearsed it, chin up, sunglasses on, that grin he wears when he's already made up his mind. Kendra slid out the passenger side with her nail color matching the banner, smooth and bright. My 8-year-old granddaughter, Zora, hopped from the back seat clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear drooped. My baby with those big questioning eyes. "Mama," Daryl said, spreading his arms like a pastor at the benediction. "Surprise. We're moving in a few days ahead of schedule. Lease is up at our place. Landlord being petty. This way we keep it in the family." "Whose schedule?" I asked. "Who told you you're moving into my home?" Kendra shifted her purse higher. "Evelyn, baby, we talked about this at Easter. Remember? The little bedroom for you when you're ready to downsize. We'll take the master so Zora can be near us. It's safer." "No, we didn't talk," I said, keeping my voice even. "You talked. I said I like my bed under my roof. I meant that thing." "You don't need all that space," Daryl said, stepping onto my porch like a foreman. "We're family. We can make it work. I got plans. Architect friend said we can open the kitchen wall." I held up my hand. "Daryl, if you cut one wall in this house without my say, so you'll be cutting your own allowance permanently." He laughed like I'd played a card he'd already trumped. "Ma, you still doing that from the hip talk? Look, we already set some things in motion. You'll see." "What things?" I said, my chest tight. "You'll see," he repeated. And that's when I knew there was paperwork somewhere with my name spelled wrong on purpose. Before I ever had a deed, I had a rhythm. Thursday nights choir practice, Saturday mornings the farmer's market stall with the old lady who sells okra that snaps clean as a hymn, Sundays church then dinner, collard greens, cornbread, a pan of chicken dressing even when it's not Thanksgiving, because my dressing tastes like comfort and childhood and love. I keep a pitcher of sweet tea in the fridge and a tin of lemon cookies I share with whoever knocks. Leon from next door, retired postal worker, sits on my steps when the storm sirens go off, pointing out cloud types like he's naming saints. At Christmas I hang a wreath that smells like the memory of my mama's kitchen. At night I read on the couch with my slippers under my heel, and Aretha humming low on the radio. That's my life. Quiet as good shoes. So when I tell you the piece of a home isn't about square footage but about order, where your keys go, how the light falls across your dining table at 3 p.m., you'll understand why the sight of that moving pod felt like somebody had put their hands in my silverware drawer. I wanted to slam the door, but Zora stepped between us with the soft courage children have. "Nana, Daddy says we're gonna paint your room purple like mine," she said. "He says you can sleep in the front room, 'cause it's smaller and you're small." I crouched down to her eye level, the smell of cotton candy shampoo rising from her braids. "Baby, this is Nana's house. Nobody paints anything without Nana saying yes. And Nana is not small. Nana is mighty." She giggled. "You are mighty." Kendra rolled her eyes. "Don't confuse her," she said. "Daryl, get the crib from the pod. We not doing this." "You are not bringing a crib into my house," I said, standing up so straight my back popped. "You are not moving one sock into my house. You will not cross my doorway with boxes I didn't invite." Daryl's mouth twisted. "You really gonna make us homeless out here in this heat? That's cold, Ma." "I'm going to make you make a plan like grown people," I said. "You're 30. You're not 5. Grown people don't put their mail at somebody else's address and call it love." "About that," Kendra said, sliding a paper from her purse, "we updated the mailing address already, so packages might land here for a minute. Just sign for them, okay? Easier for everybody." I took the form from her and felt my hand shake. Forwarding order. It had my name in block letters at the bottom like a stamp that said property of anybody. The signature looked like somebody had traced it off the light of their phone. "You forged this," I said, tasting metal. Kendra's smile was bright as a new dime. "Girl, if you're gonna accuse me of a felony, at least do it inside. The neighbors are nosy." I stepped back. "Leon," I called across the hedge. "You see that pod?" He raised a hand from his porch swing. "Been watching it like it owes me money," he said. "You need me to walk over?" "I do," I said, and the way Daryl's eyes flickered told me the element of surprise had left the building. The first lie was small and stupid. The second came wrapped in logic. The third wore a sheriff's deputy's hat. The small lie was the banner. Kendra said it was a welcome surprise. A little morale booster for Zora. Except the banner had the wrong font for Kendra. She's a script girl, thin loops, Pinterest boards full of goals. This one looked like a party store pickup, rushed, a later thought. Someone else ordered it. Who? And why? The lie wrapped in logic came the next day in a group text I never joined, just showed up on my phone like it owned the place. "Daryl, Ma will be by at 10 to start clearing the big room. Kendra, the painter set primer takes 2 hours. Nana, sounds good." My reply that wasn't mine. A green bubble I didn't send. I clicked the info and saw Nana, saved as my number. Somebody had named me like a contact you control. I started what I call my little book, spiral notebook, purple cover, the kind middle school girls use for crush lists. A tab for dates, one for money, one for keys. Notebook of suspicions. My granddaddy kept a ledger of every man who borrowed his tools and didn't bring them back. He used to say, "Write it down, Evie. People get brand new memories when it's time to settle up." So I wrote it down. June 8th, pot arrives without consent. June 8th, mail forwarding card forged. June 9th, group text I didn't send. June 9th, store clerk at Ace Hardware says, "Your boy was in here asking if y'all got Kwikset or Schlag. Keys." Home life kept me upright. Sunday came and Pastor Ruth preached about boundaries like God was the one who called the pod company. "Love isn't a free pass to trample your neighbor's harvest," she said, voice rolling like a river. "And your first neighbor is you." The choir swelled behind her and I sang lead on I Won't Complain, tears hot but steady. After service, Deacon Tyrone pressed my hand with a look. "You all right, Sister Evie?" "God's working on me," I said. "And on some others, I hope." I cooked Sunday dinner anyway. A roast with onions, cornbread from a cast iron pan that seasoned like family, green beans snapped with Leon's help on the porch. I set a place for Zora because she's the part of my son I still pray will win. When Daryl texted, "We'll be there hungry," I put my phone face down and kept stirring gravy. When they knocked, I opened the door because I was raised to feed people even when they bite the hand that cooks. We ate around my table, Mila and my cousin Patrice who'd come by with a pound cake just to see about you. And the three of them smelling like entitlement and Bath and Body Works. Daryl talked about building equity, Like he'd done anything but read a thread. Kendra said "we" about my mortgage as if she'd ever seen my overtime check. Zora drew a picture of my house with a purple roof and handed it to me like a blessing. "This is where we all live," she said. Kendra's fork made a hard scrape on her plate. "If some people stopped being so dramatic and said thank you, this could be smooth," she said, looking around at my lace curtains like they offended her. Leon leaned back in his chair, voice mild. "Thank you for what?" "For thinking long-term," Daryl said. "Market's high. We could fix this place up, refinance, flip if we had to. I got a partner." I poured tea slow and steady. "Say refinance in my kitchen one more time and see if the sugar turns to salt," I said, smiling like a lady at a hat show. "Your partner's name?" "Don't worry about it," he said, which is what men say right before they make you worry. I walked Zora to the porch when they left. She pressed her little hand in mine and whispered, "Daddy says I'm getting the room with the big window. He said it's fair 'cause you nap a lot." The lie slid beneath my skin like glass. "You tell Daddy fairness is making your own bed," I said. She nodded solemn like she'd write it down in her own notebook one day. Monday after work I stopped by the county office to drop off my homestead exemption form because I don't play with taxes. Ms. Hardy at the counter studied my ID, tapped her keyboard and frowned. "Says here your homestead address already changed," she said, peering over her glasses. "Looks like new primary owner on file pending verification." "My what did what?" I asked, my voice so calm it scared me. She printed a page and slid it to me. There, in black and bold, was a piece of nonsense. "Quitclaim deed, beneficial interest transfer." My name sat next to Daryl's like a couple that never was. Under it, a signature that tried to be mine and failed the way a counterfeit bill crinkles wrong between your fingers. "Who filed this?" I asked. Ms. Hardy shook her head. "Clerk can't say before it's verified, but," she lowered her voice, "people pull tricks. Adding names to deeds without consent happens more than you think. But the ink isn't dry till we stamp it." I took a breath that tasted like the pennies in that office jar and put my hand flat on the counter. "What do I do?" "Bring your original deed license and," she glanced at my face. "Do you have an attorney?" "I do now," I said, and walked out with the paper burning a hole in my purse. I found attorney Denise Porter in the same way black women find joy. We ask another black woman. Patrice worked in a doctor's office that shared a building with Denise's practice, and everybody in that building loved her for the way she wore pearls and righteous anger in equal measure. She listened to me without interrupting, took photos of the forged signature and said, "We're going to handle this like grown folks and like the law says." "What if the law's slow?" I asked. "It is," she said, "but we can make it loud." Denise taught me a new language. Affidavit of non-consent. Cease and desist. Notice of no permissive entry. She drafted a letter that sang like a hymn and bit like a snake, addressed to my son and his wife, telling them in elegant sentences that if they set foot on my property for the purpose of claiming residence, I would treat them like strangers who'd wandered into the wrong yard, and the law would back me. She filed a notice with the county to freeze any changes to my deed pending investigation. She also told me to change my locks. "Again," I said. "They don't have a key." "Not that I gave." "Change them anyway," she said. "Because you like sleeping." I called a locksmith. The man arrived in a van with a cartoon key on the side and a wedding band shining when he twisted tools. He hummed "A Change Is Gonna Come" under his breath while he worked. "Family?" he asked, not nosy, just human. "Family," I said. "And not." He nodded like he knew the math. That night I slid the new key on my ring and felt 10 years of breath fill my lungs. Trouble doesn't stop because you put up a fence. Climbs. Finds a chair. It leans. The chair was my mailbox. The next morning I found a stack of envelopes rubber-banded and stamped forwarding in effect. Electric. Internet. One I didn't recognize with a gold seal that said, Home Mentor Services. Inside, a pamphlet. Transitioning a parent to multigenerational living. The photo on the front showed a thin black grandma serving pie to a broad-shouldered son in a kitchen that looked suspiciously like mine after someone chopped it open. There was a sticky note, "Hi, Ms. Carter. Excited to help your family's transition. See you Wednesday at 9 a.m., Randy." I called the number and a man with a voice like a sales pitch answered. "Randy with Home Mentor. Who told you to see me?" I asked. "Your son," he said brightly. He says you're thrilled to have them move in. We can bring 7 cousins without adding to the mortgage. We don't have 7 cousins, I said, and hung up before the rage spilled out my mouth and set the telephone on fire. I added it to my purple notebook. June 12th, home mentorstray. June 12th, locks changed. June 12th, quitclaim attempt. That afternoon, Ms. Alvarez, the 6th grade science teacher at Emerson who takes her coffee black and her responsibilities serious, pulled me aside in the lunchroom. Miss Carter, she said, Zora wrote about moving into Nana's big room for her free write today. She also said her daddy said, quote, we're fixing what should have been ours anyway. She asked if I thought Nana would be mad. I told her adults talk it out. But are you okay? I am standing, I said. Thank you for seeing her though. Kids tell the clearest truth even when they don't mean to. She touched my arm. Let me know if you need anything. I smiled because some days the only thing you need is someone to say that and mean it. 2 days later, I came home to a white notice flapping like a loose tongue on my door. Notice to vacate. Owner transfer pending. It had a stamp that looked official at first glance and foolish at the second. The phone number at the bottom was my son's. I peeled the paper off slow. Leon appeared at the hedge like a spirit with a lawn chair. I was waiting to see if you'd call me, he said. That boy came by here today with a man in a tie, pointing at your roofline like he knows shingles. Asked me how long your gutters have been bad. He snorted. I told him your gutters are cleaner than his conscience. Who was the man? I asked. Called himself Mr. Right, like that makes a thug's plan holy, Leon said. Coughed when I asked for his card. Said he was consulting. Looked like a lone hawk to me. My phone buzzed. Daryl, Ma, you saw the notice? Please stop being stubborn. This is happening. We can't do this the hard way. I stood on my porch, the light soft as bread on the pecan leaves, and made a choice so quiet it thundered. No more back and forth texts I can't show to a judge. No more he said / she said on my front steps. Paper. Witnesses. Dates. I texted Denise. They put a fake vacate notice on my door. Leon saw a man in a tie. Next move? Her reply came quick. I'm filing for a temporary restraining order based on harassment and attempted fraud. Also, don't be home tomorrow at 9. I have an idea. I read that last part twice. Don't be home at 9. I slept light as a cat that night. My ear turned to every creak of my little house. I left at 8:45 the next morning for errands, which meant donuts for the office ladies at the county, an apology plant for Miss Hardy because stress made me snappish, and a stop by church to leave a note for Pastor Ruth asking for prayer for stiff necks and foolish plans. At 9:07, my phone lit up with the doorbell camera I'd installed the week after the pod arrived. On my screen, Kendra and Daryl stood on my porch with a man in a polo and a clipboard. The man knocked. When I didn't answer, he pointed to the lock and said something with his mouth held tight. Another man appeared with a tool bag, locksmith, except this one wasn't humming Sam Cooke. He pulled out a drill. Kendra smiled. Before the drill touched metal, a white cruiser eased to a stop at my curb, lights off, authority quiet as a hand on your shoulder. Deputy Harris, young, brown-skinned, serious about the badge and the words protect and serve, stepped out. He had one of Denise's folders in his hand. He tipped his hat, knocked on my door with 2 polite taps, and then turned to my son. Mr. Carter? Yeah, Daryl said, setting his jaw. You here to make entry into a residence you do not own? Deputy Harris asked. It's my mama's house, Daryl said, shrugging like a boy at recess. Family house. We got permission. You do not, Deputy Harris said, holding up the paper Denise had filed that morning with the judge's sleepy signature. Temporary restraining order. Effective immediately. Any attempt to enter, change locks, or harass the owner is a violation. Step off the porch. Kendra made a sound like a tea kettle. She's confused, she said, pointing at my door as if I stood behind it drooling. We have texts. We have forensics, he said. Step off the porch. They backed down my steps, angry and embarrassed. The locksmith stuffed his drill back in his bag like a man who suddenly remembered he had another appointment. Y'all really gonna do your mama like this? Leon called from his porch, not unkind, just true. When she the only one who taught you how to hold a spoon? Kendra shot daggers at him. "Mind your business, Mr. Mail," she snapped. "My business is mail," Leon said gently. "And I know forgery when I see it." Deputy Harris gave them each a copy of the order. "Here's how this goes," he said. "You can schedule a civil hearing if you disagree. You cannot, under penalty of law, touch this door again without the owner's consent." Daryl squared up, pride stupid as a rooster. "We'll see you in court," he said. "You will," Deputy Harris said. "Wear a clean shirt." They left with a flurry of words I couldn't hear over my own pulse, and I sat in the church parking lot with my hands on the wheel, laughing till I cried. Not victory yet, but a breath. Enough to sing a verse. Suspicion didn't stop. Tried a different door. That evening Zora FaceTimed me from her mama's phone. All teeth and bedtime light. "Nana," she whispered, which means secrets. "Daddy says you don't love him no more. He said you love the house." "I love my son," I said, slow for a child but pointed for the grown folks listening. "I don't love bad behavior. And a house loves who pays the note." "Can I come sleep over Friday?" she asked. "I miss my purple nightlight." "Of course," I said, throat thick. "We'll make pancakes with chocolate chips, and you can pick the movie. We can watch that one with the little girl, and the bee who thinks she can fly." "She can fly," Zora corrected. "She just gotta remember." "Exactly," I said. Kendra's voice floated in from off-screen. "Zora bath now." And the screen went dark. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my purple notebook. The pages rustled like a curtain you pull back on a room you didn't know you had. I wrote, June 13th, Deputy served order. June 13th, they still coming. June 13th, remember who you are. I made tea even though it was too late for caffeine. I buttered a slice of cornbread from Sunday and warmed it in the skillet till the edges crisped. In my house, that is how we armor up, fat and flour and sugar, prayer on a plate. I thought about my boy. Daryl was the kind of kid who lined up his toy cars by color in the hallway, who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunder, who stuttered when he had to speak at church until I told him each word had its own step and he could walk them one by one. Somewhere along the way he started skipping steps, easier to jump than to climb. I don't know when I turned from his mother to his plan, but I do know when I turned back, when a pod showed up in my driveway without my name on it. The next morning I found a new letter in my mailbox. Plain white, my name typed. Inside, "We'd like to discuss purchasing your property for cash. Generous offer. Close in 14 days. There was a number and a smiley face. On the back of the card, a post-it. "Your son says you're motivated." I stood in my yard in my robe, hair tied up, and laughed a laugh my grandma would have called country. I tore the card in half, then in quarters, then in confetti, and fed it to the trash like communion for fools. When I stepped back onto my porch, Leon called, "You get one of those We Buy Ugly house cards?" "I did," I said. "Ugly is in the eye of the mortgage holder," he said, and we both smiled. That evening, Pastor Ruth stopped by with a casserole and a look that meant business. She sat, hat on the chair beside her like a crown at rest. "I heard," she said. "The devil's not as clever as he thinks. He just changes hats." "I will not throw my child to the wolf," I said. "But I will not open my door to the wolf either." "Both can be true," she said. "You can love your boy and tell him to love you back with respect. Also, this Sunday, I'm preaching on the prodigal, but I'm flipping it. Sometimes the father stays home, but the son never leaves foolishness." She took my hands. We prayed. Her hands were soft and strong, dough and stone. When she left, the house smelled like casserole in church, and for the first night in a week, I slept through. A week later, no texts, no pods, quiet that felt like a held breath. An envelope slid under my door with a clumsy push. It was from a bank I didn't use. Inside, notice of credit inquiry for a home equity line of credit application. The number matched the one on Mr. Wright's card. Applicant: Evelyn L. Carter and co-applicant: Daryl J. Carter. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't call. I took a photo, sent it to Denise with the word, again, and then taped it in my purple notebook like a badge earned in a war I didn't enlist for. Denise replied, "Got it. Fraud alert placed. I'm pulling the call logs now. Also, the county rejected the quitclaim. Clerks don't play. We're scheduling a hearing for a permanent injunction. Bring your notebook. Judges love mothers with receipts." I exhaled a breath that rattled the window. Outside, 2 kids rode by on bikes, streamers fluttering, summer running through their hair. My neighbor across the street watered her marigolds with a hose that leaped and danced like a snake. The world kept going. I put a pan of biscuits in the oven because there is comfort in watching dough swell into something you can hold. The doorbell rang. I checked the camera. A woman in a pencil skirt and a man with a briefcase stood on my porch. She smiled at the camera like it was her reflection. He adjusted his tie. "Miss Carter," the woman called. "We're from Adult Protective Services. We got a call from your son. We need to conduct a wellness check." I froze, my hand on the oven door. In the background, a car idled. I could just make out Daryl's Charger parked down the block, tucked behind a maple. APS. The hat had changed again. I slowly set the oven mitts on the counter, smoothed my robe and pressed the intercom. "I'll be right out," I said. "Let me turn off the oven before something burns." I grabbed my notebook. I grabbed my deed. I grabbed the letter Deputy Harris had served. I took a breath that smelled like butter and heat and home. I opened my door and stepped onto my porch, heart steady as a drumline. "Good morning," I said. "Let's talk." I held the door wide enough for the APS lady to see my tidy living room and the pan of biscuits still steaming on the stove. The man with her tried to peer past me like I'd hidden confusion behind the curtains. I set 2 plates on the table because my grandmama raised me to feed whoever steps into my house, whether they come with help or with trouble. "Miss Carter, we received a call from your son," the woman began, voice sugar sweet and already lined up to doubt me. "He's concerned about your memory, your finances, your..." "My memory is paying the light bill on the first and the mortgage note every month on time," I said, opening my purple notebook and fanning the pages so they could see the taped photocopies. "My finances are a bank account I keep a hawk eye on, and a son who wants to peck it clean. Sit and eat if you plan to listen. If you don't plan to listen, there's the door." They sat. Steam curled from the biscuits. I slid butter toward them. The man took a cautious bite like kindness might be a trap. I pushed the notebook between the plates and tapped the first page. Photocopy of the mail forwarding card with my name forged in jittery strokes. The next, printout of the group text I didn't send. The next, county clerk's note about the quitclaim attempt. The woman smoothed the edge of the paper with her finger while the man's pen hovered. "Where did you get these?" she asked. "Clerk's office, my phone, and the good Lord's habit of letting fools write their wickedness down," I said. "You can call Emerson Middle and ask how many years I've been the first to unlock the kitchen door. You can call my bank and ask if I've missed a note. You can ask my neighbor Leon if I've forgotten my own name. The only thing I forget is forgiving too quickly." The man coughed. "We'll make a note that you're oriented, managing daily tasks, and make a note that my son is trying to steal my house," I said, and I didn't blink. They looked at each other the way people do when the script in their hand doesn't match the stage they walked onto. They left with my words still warm in the air and butter on their lips. Through the glass, I watched them walk to their sedan. Down the block, Daryl's Charger rolled away like guilt in reverse. I shut the door, clicked the new deadbolt, leaned my head against the wood for a breath that tasted like butter and steel. By the time the oven had cooled, Leon was at my porch rail with a Tupperware of peach cobbler and a story about a dog that kept stealing his newspaper. We ate with spoons straight from the plastic while the cicadas sawed the evening in half. "He sent folks to say you were losing it?" Leon asked, shaking his head. "Boy got some nerve." "He's got Kendra's ideas and a stranger's sense," I said. "Funny thing is, he used to sleep on my chest when the thunder got loud. Used to hold my ear with his little hand and calm right down. Thunder can raise a boy or scare him into foolishness," Leon said. "And some folks don't learn the difference until lightning hits their own porch." We watched the street move slow. Ms. Johnson watering her marigolds, a trio of boys racing BMX bikes, a teenage girl walking a floppy-eared dog who refused to be convinced about leashes. I breathed deeper. The neighborhood was still the neighborhood. The porch light still threw a soft circle on the steps. Inside, my house had not forgotten my name. At school the next morning, I arrived before the sun had figured out how to climb the sky. Emerson's back door stuck like always, the metal swollen with spring rains and stubborn as a mule. I hip-bumped it the way I do, slipped inside to a quiet kitchen, and turned on the big ovens. Trays clanged like bells. The smell of yeast rolls rose as proof that some things in this world work the same no matter who tries to append them. "Morning, Miss Carter," Ms. Alvarez called, sweeping in with a stack of lab kits and a coffee that smelled illegal. "You good? You look like you gripped something." "I am gripping my sanity, my deed, and my skillet," I said, smiling because if I didn't, the thin thread holding my temper would snap. "How's our Zora?" "She wrote a poem," Ms. Alvarez said, warming her hands on the coffee. "About a tree that stands even when the wind argues." I told her I know that tree. I swallowed. I know that tree too. When breakfast rush hit, I moved like choreography, milk cartons, fruit cups, cereal lined in rows neat as pews. "Good morning, baby," I said to each child, because sometimes that's the only time a child hears those words said at them like a fact and not like a wish. I handed out extra milk to the boy whose eyes always skim the floor, tucked an extra biscuit into the girl's sleeve who lingers last, and remembered that my work is to feed, even when my heart is sore. At lunch, Ms. Alvarez slid a folded paper across the counter. "Zora's free write," she said softly. "You don't have to read it now." I slipped it under the till for later. The bell rang. Trays clattered. The day moved forward like a hymn that knows where it is going. Saturday brought a false peace. I pulled weeds in the flower bed, kneeling on the foam pad I keep in the shed, hands in the dirt, mind in prayer. Sun on my shoulders felt like a hand I knew. A cardinal hopped along the fence, pretending he wasn't interested in me, and sang anyway. I clipped the brown heads off the hydrangeas and whispered, "Come back blue, come back strong," like I was speaking to more than flowers. The mailman brought me a certified letter in the stiff envelope that means nobody's playing. It was addressed to me but held Kendra's handwriting on the return. I signed, took it inside, opened it with the knife I use for twine, and read a formal notice of co-tenancy, full of big words and wrong facts. I laughed right there in my kitchen, the sort of laugh my cousin Patrice says is country and holy both. I taped that letter in my purple book like another pressed leaf in a long-growing tree. Sunday, Pastor Ruth preached on the patience of boundaries, how a fence can be a blessing because it keeps the goats out and the tomatoes safe. "It's not unkind to say no," she said, eyes skimming the congregation like she could find the exact hearts that needed it. "It's unkind to pretend a yes that breaks you." The choir slid under her words like a river under a bridge. I lifted my hands and felt my fingers tingle. After service, the ladies of the kitchen committee asked me how to get mac and cheese creamy without making it soupy. Pastor squeezed my shoulder in the fellowship hall and said, "You call me if the wolves show up wearing new fur." "I will," I said. "And thank you for preaching my mouth today." "I don't preach your mouth," she said. "I preach your bones." 2 days later, I found a man in a polo shirt on my porch with a measuring tape around his neck like jewelry. He lifted the tape at my doorframe as if it were H. "Can I help you?" I asked. My voice was low. My patients wore boots. "Family Transitions is here for your kitchen consultation," he said, smiling like he'd met me at a picnic and I'd invited him in for lemonade. "Your son booked us for a partial wall removal. We specialize in creating multigenerational harmony." I leaned in like we were sharing secrets. "I specialize in saying no." His smile faltered. "We could talk through options. You can talk yourself back to your van," I said, step by step shepherding him down my steps. "Your consultation is concluded. My harmony is intact." A second man rounded the hedges with a clipboard and a phone, snapping photos as he walked. "Sir," I said, "delete whatever you think you just took before I call the sheriff and have the pastor meet us in the yard to pray over your choices." They packed quicker than they arrived. Leon watched from his porch, mouth twisted sideways like a knot. "You really told that man you were going to pray over his choices?" he said when I came back out with a pitcher of sweet tea for both of us. "I did," I said. "And I meant it. Trouble's scared of prayer and witnesses." I wrote their company name down in my book, circled it, and underlined the date. I send notes to future me the way other folks send texts, clear and short and ready to be reread when someone tries to lie about yesterday. Denise called that evening. I was mixing up cornbread, cast iron skillet already hot and slick with butter, the batter the color of late afternoon. "Evelyn," she said, voice sharp as a fresh pencil. "The clerk's office flagged the quitclaim as fraudulent and rejected it. That's a win. Now here's the caution. People like your son and his wife don't back out easy. They may try to force a scene or bring in someone who looks official. Keep your door locked and your calm ready. My calm stays in the freezer like extra stock, I said. I can thaw it quick and it lasts when company shows up uninvited. She laughed, then sobered. I'm filing for a temporary restraining order on harassment and attempted fraud. We'll need to serve it. Best way is to catch them on your porch when they try something. Think of it like fishing, line ready, hook set, patience. Fishing was always my daddy's job, I said, pouring the batter and listening to the sizzle sing. But I can learn. Also, talk to your neighbor Leon and the pastor. Witnesses matter. They already matter, I said. Kendra tried sweet next. She arrived with Zora, a bouquet of roses wrapped in plastic and water beads clinging to the petals like tears. Zora held them like they mattered more than anything and told me, Daddy says these are peace flowers. Thank you, baby, I said, bending to smell them. They were grocery store roses, a little tired, a little brave, still trying to be what God meant. Kendra hung back, calculating. Evelyn, she said, voice buttered, we don't want war. We just want what's fair. This house is big for one woman. We all could make it work. We could handle repairs you don't want to deal with. You can focus on your job and your rest. I've been handling repairs since before you learned how to say gel manicure, I said, keeping my tone soft because Zora's ears are little and sharp. And rest feels better when you're not resting on a stolen pillow. Zora blinked up at me. What's stolen mean? It means taking something that isn't yours, I said. Like taking Nana's porch swing and calling it yours just because you like how it feels. Oh, she said, thinking hard. I wouldn't do that. I know, baby. That's why you're my favorite girl. Kendra's mouth tightened. We'll talk another time, she said, which is what people say when they don't like the answer they already got. After they left, I trimmed the stems and put the roses in the good vase my Aunt Lila gave me when I signed my mortgage. Thick glass, heavy bottom, not easily tipped. I set them on the mantel under the picture of my mama in her white usher uniform, hat tilted like a question she already knew the answer to. The flowers looked sweet and stubborn. I understood them. That night, thunder rolled in from the west, low and rolling like a choir warming up. I unplugged my porch fan and set a towel along the kitchen door because the wind sometimes frets the rain sideways. When lightning cracked open the sky, I whispered, Lord, settle it. I pictured my son as a boy again, his small hand holding my ear through storms. I pictured him now, grown and swelling at the wrong places, pride and foolishness like weather fronts colliding. People think a storm happens all at once, but I know better. It builds and builds, and then the last straw of humidity snaps the sky. I slept with that truth in my mouth like a hard candy I dared not swallow. At 3 a.m, a car idled outside my house. I didn't move. I didn't lift the blinds. The engine purred like a cat that doesn't love you. After a long minute, it drove off. I put that in my book too. People who make plans in the dark don't have the courage to make them at noon. 2 days later, a white envelope slid under my door with a hiss. Inside was a glossy pamphlet, Home Mentor Services, Helping Your Parent Transition, and a sticky note that said, Can't wait to meet Wednesday at 9. Randy. I called the number and a man answered bright and chirpy like a morning news anchor. Randy, this is Miss Carter, I said. Who told you I put my life up for remolding like a church basement? Your son scheduled. Then your son scheduled you for a lesson in minding your own business, I said, and hung up before my temper outran my wisdom. Ms. Hardy from the county office called 30 minutes later. We had someone try to file a notice of interest on your property again, she said, voice a little gossipy and mostly protective. Different form, same mess. We sent it back. Also, there was a credit inquiry for a home equity line listing your name and someone else's. Daryl, I said, feeling my pulse count itself. Likely, she said. You want me to flag anything with your parcel number for 90 days? Yes, ma'am, I said. Flag it like a marching band on homecoming. You got it, she said, and I heard her nails clack on her keyboard like armor. I called the bank. Steam rose from my tea while I waited on hold listening to a soft piano tune so gentle it made me want to cry. When the fraud specialist came on, I told her my name in the same steady voice I use when asking a student why their tray is full of just French fries. She put a note on my account that made anybody trying to touch it answer questions they didn't know how to spell. She told me she liked my calm. I told her I keep it in the freezer. When I hung up, I walked my house like a patrol. I ran my hand over the peach paint in my bedroom and felt how cool it held morning. I touched the smooth edge of the dresser Daryl used to hide under during hide and seek, his feet always sticking out from the dust ruffle. I paused in the hallway where the pictures hang. My parents on their wedding day in a brown and cream photo that looks like caramel, me in my cap and gown holding Daryl on my hip because I graduated with him right there. The day I got keys to this house, me on the porch in a summer dress with a smile so wide it almost splits me in two. Houses remember. Walls tell on you. I pressed my palm on the hall and whispered, I won't let them write on you with lies. Wednesday at 9, right when Randy had planned to arrive with his clipboard and his smile, Denise texted, Don't be home. Deputy Harris is staging at the corner. If they show, he'll serve. I slid my purse on my arm, tucked my notebook inside, and headed to the county office with a bag of cinnamon rolls for Ms. Hardy. It felt like leaving a pot on a low simmer. Heat on, lid snug. At the clerk's counter, I learned the names of 3 forms I never want to need again. Ms. Hardy ate 2 rolls and told me her first husband tried to sign her car over once. Men get bold when they think you still love them like you used to, she said. Love changes shape. Paper doesn't. When I walked back to my car, my phone vibrated. The doorbell camera showed Kendra on my porch with a man holding a tool bag and a drill. Daryl stood just off screen. Kendra knocked like she paid my property taxes. The man bent to the lock. Another vibration. Deputy Harris pulling up, lights off, the way authority moves when it knows what it's doing. He stepped out with a manila envelope and the weight of the county on his belt. I sat there in the clerk's lot with the Oklahoma sun bouncing off the hood in white sparks, and watched 3 seconds of video that felt like the prelude to a song I'd waited months to hear. I put my forehead on the steering wheel and laughed, the kind of laugh that empties the room behind your ribs. Not gloating. Relief, trying to figure out a body that's been tense for weeks. Denise texted, Head home in 20. Pastor's meeting us there. I got there before they left. My heart was doing double time the way it does in a choir when the drummer finds the pocket. I parked behind Leon's truck and saw he dragged his lawn chair to his front walk like a front row seat. Ms. Johnson stood on her porch with a dish towel she twisted slowly in her hands. A couple of teenage boys leaned on their bikes at the corner, eyes wide, not because they love drama, but because the truth in broad daylight is a rare show and worth a ticket. Kendra had on a white blouse and sunglasses, city chic on a neighborhood porch. Daryl wore a shirt too tight for his plans. The man with the drill had the uneasy stance of a person who's realized he's the extra in someone else's movie. Deputy Harris stood at the foot of my steps with a manila envelope raised like a benediction. Denise's sedan stopped behind me. She got out, heels clicking like punctuation marks. Pastor Ruth arrived in her big straw hat that looked like the sun itself had decided to sit down and judge the matter. I saw Kendra's lips moving fast, brittle. Daryl's hands opened and closed like he was trying to catch air. The deputy's mouth was steady, the way you talk to snakes you don't intend to kill but won't let near your garden. Denise opened her briefcase and pulled papers like a magician revealing scarves, deed affidavits, a letter on county letterhead that made official noises just seeing it. I took my steps slow because this was still my porch and it owed me calm. The deputy looked up and saw me. He didn't smile. He did nod. Respect can be better than a grin. Miss Carter, he said. We've got that order ready. I stood on my top step, denim skirt brushing my calves, house key warm in my palm. Daryl lifted his chin like the boy who used to square up on the playground and dare another kid to touch him. Ma, he said, loud enough for the crowd because pride always plays to the balcony. You really doing all this? For a house? You really got police at your mama's door. I took a breath that smelled like porch wood and summer. The pecan leaves shivered. The street leaned in. And then before my answer could leave my chest, Denise touched the deputy's sleeve and said, Calm and clean. Deputy, if you would. He lifted the envelope. Kendra's sunglasses reflected the paper like 2 small white flags she didn't know how to wave. Daryl shifted his weight. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and then put its head back down because it knew better than to interrupt what God had scheduled. The deputy began to speak. The deputy's voice rang out, flat and official, like a hammer hitting iron. By order of the county court, this protective order takes effect immediately. Daryl Carter and Kendra Carter, you are barred from this residence. Any attempt to enter, harass, or interfere will result in your arrest. A hush fell over the yard. Even the cicadas seemed to pause in the heavy summer air. Neighbors crowded the sidewalk, arms crossed, whispers rippling like waves. Pastor Ruth stood tall with her Bible pressed to her chest. Denise arranged her papers like she was setting out communion. And Leon leaned on his cane, eyes steady on my son. Daryl's jaw twitched. His lips curled into a smile that wasn't a smile. You're siding with her lies? She's confused. That woman can't handle this house anymore. I'm just trying to help. Denise lifted one page high. This, she said, is the certified deed. Evelyn Carter, sole owner. Your mother. Not you. Not your wife. Not anyone else. She set it down and raised another. And this is the rejection of the fraudulent quitclaim you submitted at the clerk's office. Forged signature. Attempted theft. She tapped her purple notebook, my notebook, with reverence. And here is the record day by day of what Evelyn endured. Locks changed behind her back. Furniture moved without consent. Money siphoned, threats whispered. A diary that proves not just fraud but intent. A murmur rolled through the neighbors like gospel humming at a funeral. Kendra's sunglasses slid down her nose. She snatched them off, eyes darting like she was trapped in a spotlight. This is madness, she spat. You all think she's some saint, but she's old. She forgets things. She begged us to move in because she was lonely. Pastor Ruth stepped forward, her voice calm but caring. Kendra, don't twist loneliness into license. God don't bless dishonor. What's whispered in the dark he brings into the light. And the light is here. Daryl jabbed a finger at me. Mama, tell them. Tell them you asked me to stay. Tell them you can't do this alone. I straightened my shoulders, the porch boards creaking under my feet. I told you to visit. I told you to call. I never told you to steal my keys, take my money, and decide my future. That's not love. That's robbery. For the first time, his bravado cracked. His eyes flicked to the crowd, old schoolmates, neighbors, folks he'd known since boyhood. Ms. Johnson whispered, "Shame on him," and Patrice clutched her chest. Then a small voice cut through everything. From the car, my granddaughter Zora leaned out the window. "Daddy, why is Nana crying if we're helping her?" The silence that followed was so thick it felt holy. Even the deputy paused, pen hovering above his notepad. Daryl froze, his face empty. Kendra turned her head away, and I wiped my cheeks, not ashamed. "Baby," I said, my voice breaking but firm. "Truth don't make tears. Lies do." The crowd sighed, a collective amen carried on the breeze. What followed stretched long and raw. The deputy asked questions, and Denise answered with dates, receipts, affidavits. The neighbors spoke up. Leon swore he saw Daryl loading furniture in a U-Haul without my say. Ms. Johnson recalled Kendra bragging in the salon that, "Soon enough the house will be ours." Even Patrice, who rarely spoke above a whisper, testified that she overheard my son calling me senile at the grocery store. Each word was a nail, and Daryl's confidence bled out with every blow. He tried to fight. "These people don't know the truth. They jealous. They've been against me since I was a kid." But the deputy wasn't moved. "This isn't about jealousy, Mr. Carter. This is about law." When Denise slid the forged texts across for the deputy to examine, the lawyer beside him, a stout man from downtown, leaned in. "Clearly fabricated," he said. "Metadata confirms manipulation." Kendra's face drained of color. I didn't mean." "You meant," the lawyer cut in. "And presenting false evidence to officers is a crime." The crowd gasped like a choir catching the spirit. Finally, the deputy closed his notebook. "You have 5 minutes to gather whatever belongings you brought into this property. After that, you leave. If you step back onto this porch without authorization, you will be arrested. Do I make myself clear?" Daryl's voice dropped low, nearly a growl. "You think you've won, Mama, but you ain't got nobody now. Nobody but these nosy neighbors." I stepped closer, my cane firm in my grip. "I got peace. I got dignity. And I got a God who don't sleep. That's more than enough." He glared at me one last time, then stormed inside. Minutes later, he and Kendra dragged their bags down the steps, faces red, eyes avoiding every stare. Zora trailed behind, clutching a stuffed bear. She paused at the gate, turned back, and whispered, "I love you, Nana." I pressed my hand to my chest. I love you too, baby. Always. Then they were gone, car roaring, exhaust clouding the street. The weight that lifted off my chest was heavier than any box I'd ever carried. The weeks that followed were not quiet at first. Whispers spread across town. Some folks pitied me, others admired me, some stayed silent. But every Sunday, Pastor Ruth reminded me, a woman who stands for truth may shake, but she don't fall. The court finalized the restraining order. Denise checked on me weekly, papers in hand, making sure no cracks were left open. Leon fixed the gate so it closed tight. Ms. Johnson brought pies as if sugar could seal wounds. And me, I cleaned. I scrubbed the walls Daryl tried to paint over, polished the furniture Kendra had shoved aside, replanted the marigolds in neat rows. Every stroke of a rag, every seed pressed into soil was like reclaiming my breath. Then came the first Sunday dinner back in my home. The table groaned under collards, cornbread, fried catfish, baked macaroni, and pecan pie. Gospel floated from the radio, the Clark sisters filling the air with harmonies. Pastor Ruth prayed long and sweet, blessing not just the food but the peace that returned to the house. Neighbors laughed. Children played tag in the yard. Leon tapped his cane to the rhythm, and Denise sat by my side, hand resting on mine. I looked around my table and realized, blood may betray, but community can carry you. As weeks turned into months, life steadied. I rose early, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise through the window I had once feared losing. I walked the garden barefoot, feeling earth beneath my toes. I cooked meals just for me and sometimes shared with friends. And every now and then, Zora would visit, sneaking drawings into my mailbox. One showed a house with a big heart inside it. Another showed a tree with roots that reached deep. She knew, even at her age, what mattered most, roots and heart. One evening, sitting on the porch with Leon, fireflies blinking like tiny lanterns, I said, I thought I'd feel empty without them. But I don't. I feel whole. He nodded slow. Because what they tried to steal wasn't just wood and brick. It was your dignity. And you took it back. I breathed deep, the night air cool and forgiving. Yes, I said. And I intend to keep it. So hear me now. I am Evelyn Carter, 51 years old, grandmother, cook, gardener, survivor. My house stands because I stood. My spirit holds because I refused to break. My future shines because I chose truth over blood when blood turned against me. Sometimes you have to draw a line even against your own. Sometimes peace is worth more than keeping the family circle unbroken. And sometimes the greatest act of love, for yourself and even for your children, is saying no. This was my story. Now tell me, what part touched your heart the most?